Breaking It Down with Frank MacKay. This is 103.9 LI News Radio.
I'd like to welcome everyone to Breaking It Down. Frank MacKay here. So much more importantly, an explorer, an adventurer extraordinaire, former business executive, someone who has just seen everything. It hasn't come easy for her, and she has triumphed over all types of adversity. But what she's done with her life is just unbelievable. It's exciting. It's things that movies are made of, and we look back and we say, come on, you got to be kidding. There's no character in the world like this, and there is. And you must pre-order this book, and I'll prove it to you. To the Greatest Heights, and hopefully I have the subtitle, Facing Danger, Finding Humility, Climbing a Mountain of Truth. And Vanessa O'Brien is our very special guest, and I'm thrilled to have her. Everyone pre-order 2 of these books and give one to someone you love and keep one for yourself. But Vanessa, how are you?
I'm very good, Frank. How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. And listen, let me ask you, one of the first things I thought about when I heard about you originally is you've done all these different things, and the 7-continent situation where you've climbed the highest peak on 7 continents. What's the biggest threat? And it sounds like there's a lot of threats, but in your mind, what's the biggest threat? Is it avalanche? Is it slipping? Is it freezing? What's the biggest threat in all of these?
Oh, wow. I would say if you're climbing a really big peak, and this would be over 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters, there's only 14 in the world, and they're all in Asia. These are the biggest mountains, and I would say 85% of deaths happen on descent, so on the way down.
Wow.
And the biggest risk tends to happen really around climbers using all of their energy on going up on the mountain. So they're giving everything to get to that summit.
Yeah.
But the summit is only halfway.
Wow.
And they have to get down. And the problem with getting down is, of course, you've got gravity. And gravity, an 8,000 meter peak hits the very, very bottom of the troposphere. That's how high you are. And all the weather takes place in the troposphere. So the storms and the weather and the variability and 200-mile-an-hour winds, jet streams, all that stuff happens there. It's so highly unpredictable when the weather will change. You think about that Into Thin Air, right, the John Krakauer book,
yeah,
and how weather trapped the climbers. The weather came in underneath them, trapping them higher. So coming down when you're exhausted, dehydrated, you have cognitive failure, you're in the death zone, your body's starting to die. It's just, I don't even know that it's avalanches. I think it's human error, and human error of just not, what it ends up being is falling, disappearance,
wow. Everything that you're saying, it's just giving me chills. I'll tell you, just thinking.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible because what they'll do is they'll classify it into smaller groups, even altitude sickness related, high altitude pulmonary edema or, other things. But the reality is that the climber as a person is not able to be, they've given too much and have not saved any reserves.
Have you, and again, we'll remind everyone once again, it's a must get. To the Greatest Heights. Vanessa O'Brien is with us today, and please get this book. Vanessa, have you ever had a moment out there where you just completely forgot where you were? You lost your track, where your mental capacities just kind of left you momentarily or for a while. Did you ever have a moment like that?
I have. It's quite scary when it happens because, you're out. First of all, I'll say that these expeditions are 6 to 8 weeks, and the reason that they're that long is because it takes the body that long to build the red blood cells, which are oxygen rich, and this allows the body to go to these high altitudes. You can actually be up there without oxygen. It's just that I recommend climbers have oxygen just for that last 26,000 feet and higher because of that changing weather conditions, and to protect what we call digits, your hands and your feet, because otherwise you can lose them. And the oxygen is just at a flow rate, like 2 liters mixed with ambient air. It just offsets the exertion levels and feeds those fine little pieces of skin and tissue. But the point is that you can black out temporarily. Hopefully you come back. Some climbers that don't, that they say if you sit down and rest, potentially you don't get up, and that's where problems can fail. And, you can potentially be left there or stay there and not get up again. And that does happen. It's another reason why I always suggest not to climb alone, to have a climbing buddy so that you're have somebody like a dive buddy. You're keeping each other honest and, alive, because it's an extreme sport. But, when I wrote the book, I really wrote the book from the perspective of the girl next door because, look, I was born in Michigan. I, started off with a community college. I wasn't destined to do great things. So even when climbing came up to me as an idea, I take the reader with me in terms of looking at climbing as I don't know how to climb, but it's a skill, and a skill can be learned and therefore taught. So when I go out to learn how to do it, I'm Googling Everest in the book, and I'm taking the reader along with me on that journey. So you don't need to know how to climb. It's not really a climbing book as much as it is a book about getting outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that this is going to be read by people that are trying to do things that most people don't believe they can do, and they're going to draw inspiration from you. Most people aren't going to go to the Himalayas. I should mention too, you were the first woman to summit Killer Mountain K2, and again, whatever that means to a climber is something, but to a layperson, it just sounds so frightening. And listen, everything you've done is just incredible. One more word on the book, if you would, before we let you go. And a lot of people are waiting to talk to you. Your feeling after the book, as opposed to the start of the book. I mean, how much different do you look at your life since you've written this book?
Well, the book came more from audiences that were saying, they want to know more. And, there was so much, climbing is about the teams that you're with, some of the situations that you find yourself in that you can't really make up. And sharing those experiences are valuable because of what you learn from them. And what you find is when you step outside of your comfort zone, there's a lot that you can learn by looking back at it. And what you primarily learn is when you take a step, you have a data point and you know whether you're better off or not. And you're not really risking as much as you think you are because all the knowledge, skills, and experience you have are yours, and you can always go back.
Listen, congratulations, Vanessa. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. It's what people have to understand. They're not taking as much risk as they think they are because all of that is with them in the beginning.
Well, Vanessa, I want to congratulate you on everything that you've done. Certainly the book is not the least of, but we're going to get this book, and we'll talk about it as we let you go. Can you give us a website or a social media site to follow along, and then we'll be talking about the book as we let you go?
Yeah. Everything is under the initials Victor Oscar Bravo Online. So Vanessa O'Brien Online, VOB Online.
Vanessa, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Great chatting.
To the Greatest Heights, everyone, is the name of the book. Facing Danger, Finding Humility, and Climbing a Mountain of Truth is the full title. Vanessa O'Brien. I get caught up when she's talking about that, especially dying. What's the closest that people, or what do they most have to worry about when they're climbing as far as death goes? And that's kind of interesting. It's on the descent. And it's it sounds like when people kind of forget to do what they're supposed to do, and again, getting to the top, they put all their energy there, and I guess it makes a lot of sense. You're not going to die before you get to that. Or maybe we will. People who don't do this very often, and but people that are out there, that's not where they're going to find their death. The experienced climbers, it's going to be on the way back. And it does make an awful lot of sense, because they've made their goal, and now we just gotta we gotta get back down and get home, and maybe they let their guard down, and something happens. And the other thing I always wanted to ask someone like this, do you ever forget where you were? And she talked about. I wish we had more time with her. I would get more into that, just the psychology of what happens to you out there, and it's just wow. I just can't imagine doing anything like that. And I'm a traveler. I don't know if I'm an adventurer, and certainly not like Vanessa O'Brien. But I've been to 6 continents, all 50 states, and 50 countries, and I'm planning a lot more. But I don't climb mountains at each one of those places, and she does, and that's what she does. And she broke a Guinness Book record, and she reached the highest peak on every continent in 295 days, and it's just mind-blowing. Folks like this, and she's one of them, and she's on the Rushmore. As far as women goes, she is the top in her field, but that's almost minimizing what she does. I mean, as an explorer, adventurer, she is just extraordinary, and her goals and accomplishments are just monstrous. Again, she's an explorer, adventurer, former business executive, had a rough childhood. Get the book. To the Greatest Heights, Facing Danger, Finding Humility, and Climbing a Mountain of Truth is the full title. Frank MacKay signing off. Vanessa O'Brien has been our very special guest. We'll see you next time on Breaking It Down.
Hi, Paul.
Oh, hi, Vanessa. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
A British woman is successfully summoned K2. That is absolutely amazing. Vanessa, you've got a book out, just out, called To the Greatest Heights, and that is subtitled Facing Danger, Finding Humility, and Climbing a Mountain of Truth. And it sounds like so far you've been a success climbing the mountains, but also in life as well. But it hasn't always been easy for you. Vanessa, first of all, thank you for joining us. Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
All right. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your feeling when you did reach the top, because this is a killer mountain. This has left a lot of folks in a bad situation, but you were able to scale, K2. You were at the top. Can you kind of share with us the feeling that you had knowing that you had completed this amazing task?
Absolutely. Well, K2, so most of the things that I have done, I was able to do the first time. So, except Everest and K2, ironically, the first and the last. So, K2 took me 3 years to get to the summit. So, I think the thing that you work hardest for is the thing that you value the most. And that's certainly true for K2. The first year I went was 2015, and I was able to get to Camp 1, but it was an El Nino year, so there was rockfall. And people thought, a bit of bad luck, but, you really ought to go again. So I went back in 2016, and then we got to Camp 2, but everything that we had stashed at one camp higher at Camp 3 was avalanche down. So all the equipment, tents, oxygen, everything that we had cached and stored at Camp 3 was avalanche down. So that called the expedition off. And so the question was, would I go back for a third, what I called season 3, like a box set DVD? And then, planets aligned, and I managed to get back that third year. And it was tough. It was a tough year because K2 is shaped like a triangle, the way a child would draw a mountain. There's no reprieve. It's steep from the beginning to the end. To get there is, 100 kilometers. You have to go down a glaciated, a glacier actually. You have to build tents along the way. There's no tea houses like there are in Nepal. If you have a team of 12, you have porters, 250 porters carrying 8 tons of equipment, tents, supplies, oxygen. So it's really, really hard to get to, and the weather is completely unpredictable. So in 2017, we were the only team to make the summit, and it's really, really, it's a difficult mountain. I watched a lot of people turn around. I have complete respect for people who turn around because it's just a risk, trade-off of people who are willing to take more risk versus not take risk, and there's no guarantee of a summit on K2. In fact, there's a 40% roll of the dice in any one year that you will summit or not summit since 1986. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's a tough mountain. But, in fact, in the book, I'd say the book is 3 parts: the pursuit of Everest. So you don't need any climbing experience. I take you through as I learn how to climb. And climbing is just a metaphor for getting outside of your comfort zone. The 7 summits, the highest peak on every continent, and then going right into K2.
Wow. Now, I'd imagine being able to do something like this, you would have to do a lot of training in preparation. And from what I understand, your training regimen is pretty intense.
Yeah, so training is the most important thing for training is really to be efficient with oxygen. So any sort of cardiovascular, some say VO2 max, so that's just a sort of a predictor of how efficient your body is utilizing oxygen under an incremental increase in exertion. So you want to increase your cardio capacity and make sure your body's utilizing oxygen, because oxygen will be, will be harder, as you go into that quote thinner air, like into thin air with the John Krakauer book. And you want to be able to be efficient. As you acclimatize, your body will build red blood cells, which are oxygen rich, but you want to be able to really, be able to move in that environment, which is tricky. That's what makes high mountains harder than, say, lower mountains, and why you see one climber take 1 step in 5 breaths, which makes it not really a sport that you want to watch for a long period of time. It moves slow.
After losing your job in the 2009 financial crash, you decided to climb Mount Everest. Why?
Yeah, it's funny when you're working in a really intense environment and you're busy, working long hours and doing lots of stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, that's gone, you sort of need to replace that with something intense. Like, if you're a type A person, it just doesn't really matter what you do. That means you've got a big capacity for doing lots of stuff. So when I stopped working, I had to replace that with something. And that really was interesting for me, to not work almost from the first time at 15 when I was babysitting with paper routes and, doing part-time jobs and always filling, my life with stuff. And now at the other end, a little bit older, because I was 45 years old when I stood on the top of Everest.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it's interesting when I look at some of the, like my first family that came over and immigrated from Austria-Hungary. I think the first person to come was 45 years old, right? So he was the first explorer. And, if you think about it that way, and here I am 45 years old, 2 or 3 generations later, standing at the top of Everest. So age has shifted, and age is sort of a mental thing anyway. You can do anything that you want to do, but what are you willing to put into it? And for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kept trying to, proverbially try different shoes on. And I didn't know how to climb, but I saw climbing as a skill, and a skill could be learned and therefore taught. What I didn't know is would I like it and would I be any good at it? And that's what we find out in the book. Is I take everybody on the journey and I say, how about if we try this? Well, and it's funny. The book is actually very funny. because you see the people that I'm climbing with. Some are, total jerks. Some are really lovely, and you see the kindness of strangers. You see these really unique environments around the world, and it gives you faith again in human nature too.
Oh, excellent. Now, Vanessa, I know your time is very limited, so my last question for you is kind of twofold. Only 20% of high-altitude climbers are women. Is that percentage growing? And also, do you have any advice for women who are thinking about becoming involved with mountain climbing?
I would say the percentage is increasing. It could be, maybe 25%. But what's interesting about that statistic, if I compare just the statistic of women as a percentage that climb Everest versus, say, women as a percentage in the boardroom of the Fortune 500, more women climb Everest than are as a percentage of the Fortune 500 in the boardroom.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the comparison of the stats are only more interesting when you compare it to something else. So I always joked and said maybe women need crampons, i.e. the stuff on mountaineers' feet, to get to the boardrooms. Because whoever thought that there were more women climbing mountains than that were succeeding in business?
That is amazing.
Right?
That is amazing.
So that's where it gets interesting. And then I would say, yes, if people are really, really interested, start hiking, start going outdoors, get yourself familiar with some trails, and then there's lots of information online. But definitely start small and work your way up and, research and see if you like it. And if you do, you can certainly, give it a go and give it a try and stuff. It's good to get outside of your comfort zone, but it does not need to be mountaineering.
Absolutely. Great advice for life as well. Vanessa O'Brien, new book is To the Greatest Height. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Celebrity file, I have a food file, I have an athlete file, I have an author file. I don't have a mountain climbing women file.
Aha.
So I'm a little confused as where to put Vanessa O'Brien.
Well, you could put it under a memoir. Do you have a memoir file, a book file?
I have a book file, but you're so much more than an author, it seems like it would cheapen your life experience.
What about Explorer? Do you have an Explorer file?
I know, but I'll start. Explorer's good. I could author and biography. Justin Bieber's written 3 autobiographies. Who's demanding this? Who's asking?
Yeah, so I think it's maybe Explorer file would be good because there are so many explorers out there and they have all different experiences, and with exploration comes lots of lessons.
Rarely do I do an interview with somebody and lay ground rules, but I'm going to do that with you, and the one ground rule is this. Your answer to any of my questions cannot be because it was there.
Oh, that's terrible. Terrible.
Everyone that ever climbed anything, they've always, it was there, so it needed to be conquered. I'm like, no, that doesn't tell me anything.
So you're going to take away Mallory's line, and you're going to prevent me from saying it.
Is that his line it was?
That was. People think it was Hillary, but it was Mallory.
Okay, what if I let you use it once, and you can pick the spot?
Okay, perfect.
Are you, let's dive right into your personal life. Are you married? Are you involved? Or?
Yep, married 20, when it's over 20 years, do you have to know exactly how long?
There was a comedian who just talked about that and said, after 10, 15, 20 years, it's not so much romance anymore. It's kind of like going into a partnership in a really bad nonprofit.
Well, he's British, and he's like the Martha Stewart of greeting cards. So, it's like he knows the exact date, hour, time, and I'm like the one, taking up the 5-gallon thing to replace the water, when it's empty. And I don't remember the date and the time.
You the Martha Stewart of greeting cards. Isn't Martha Stewart the Martha Stewart of greeting cards?
Yeah, but she's got a doppelganger, in the British world, and he's male, and I'm married to him, so.
I have to tell you this, Vanessa. My life and my relationship with my wife mirrors Sans the Mountain. Exactly what you have going. I do the cooking. I shop online when we're laying in bed. And she builds bookcases and watches YouTube videos and puts up backsplashes and things.
That's great. That's exactly right. That's where we're at.
That's what we got going. So, were you a tomboy? Is this adventure spirit something that came out early in your world?
Well, I had very young parents. And, if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I had to go hunting or fishing. And fishing was ice fishing, so it was a cold and miserable experience. And we couldn't talk because it would scare the fish. So, you'd spend hours freezing on the ice as far away as possible because that's where the good fish were. And sit on a bucket in an ice shanty and stare into a hole. And not talk.
You really paint a glamorous picture of it, to be sure. Wow, so it's exactly like I pictured. I asked about your husband and your relationship because I'm curious as to how they feel about mom or their life partner going to climb a giant mountain, which, from what I've been able to gather from the National Geographic's channel, is what some people would call dangerous.
Yeah, here's where the British spouse is great because he's got that stiff upper lip. So, he's very, very proud. He doesn't outwardly display emotion. So, he does want that phone call, when it's over to say it's done and hopefully successful rather than a phone call saying the alternative. But there's a point in the book where he has to sign a body disposal form that says if something goes wrong, what are we doing with my remains? And the question is it getting kicked into a crevasse, or is it, are they going to try to burn it, kick it to a crevasse, or are they going to try to bring it home for some enormous amount of money? And he says, just so we're clear, we're absolutely not bringing it home for an enormous amount of money. It's like, so it's very, very funny where he's like, it's already costing an enormous amount of money. We're not doing an enormous amount of money on the back end as well as the front end. So the book is funny. It's, you can't be serious about serious things all the time because it would do your head in. You have to be somewhat lighthearted. Of course, I train. I take it seriously. I don't take unnecessary risks, but it is risky. So, and I respect all decisions that take place on the mountain. But there are some events where, it's you are doing something where you can't. Well, I'll tell you one thing. In business, you're taught to control everything. And in nature, you cannot control everything. And therein lies the difference.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're late to the party to the greatest heights, facing danger, finding humility, and climbing a mountain of truth, a book that is out from our guest, Vanessa O'Brien, American/British mountaineer, explorer. Are you still in the world of business? I know you had like a desk job for a while and a briefcase and that whole deal and appointments, or is that all out the window now?
I never thought it would be because I expected to do this initially just for a short period of time, but I don't know, looking back, how I ever thought that could be a temporary thing, because I think the mountains made me too philosophical and too aware. of things like climate change and the state of the environment, and I don't know that I could really probably sit behind a desk and do things that didn't serve a higher purpose.
A business card's painted on the side of a rock now. So when people put out books telling their story, and yours in particular, part of it being, and a big part, being that you climbed K2 and happened to be the first American woman to do so and the first British woman to do so and come back in one piece. But with the book, I imagine there's a compulsion and almost an obligation to put more of you in it. This doesn't define me, but here are some other things that also were very big parts of my world. Do you do much of that in here?
So yeah, I'd say the first part is the pursuit of Everest. The second part is climbing the 7 summits, so the highest peak on every continent, and the third is K2. And I'd say the difference is mountaineering is more as a metaphor. So it's just, I am leaving the business world and I'm now looking to get outside of the comfort zone, try something new. So as I learn to climb, I take the reader with me to climb with me. So I'm Googling Everest in the book, and they're doing it with me. Now, as we go around the world, what becomes interesting is the types of teams that I'm with, who climbs, the kindness of strangers, some total jerks. It's kind of that type of scenario. It's more interesting the people I'm with and the types of situations that occur. And then the pursuit of K2 becomes interesting because, well, I've mostly done things the first time. K2 makes me climb 3 times to get to the summit, and it's a really interesting juxtaposition in that while I'm trying for the summit, I start to really learn and understand about the country of Pakistan, which I would never have been able to do if I parachuted in and out very quickly. And I'm grateful for that, because I would never have been able to have that experience if I went in so quickly and came out so quickly. And
the world's got only so many peaks and things. So have you determined that, well, after you climb this, there really isn't anything left to get my carabiners out for?
Well, and then interesting, the book, just last year I became sort of the first woman to go to Earth's highest and lowest, meaning Everest and Challenger Deep. So Challenger Deep is not in the book, but I don't stop. In other words, an opportunity to go to effectively 36,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean, which is 2 miles deeper than Everest is tall, presented itself, and I went to do that because I realized that basically, I became one of 2 women to do that. There had never been a submersible that was able to go up till this point that had never gone more than once down and once up. 2 had gone, and they only made one journey one time. And they were 52 years apart. So I was excited to take this trip because I realized the oceans were 71% of the Earth's surface, absorbed 25% of its carbon, and represented some interesting things around solutions to climate change. So I think with an explorer's view, as you start to look at the world, you see the glaciers melting, and a third of them are already gone. But now you look at the ocean and you see another part of the puzzle, atmosphere, oceans, and these pieces start to come together, and ultimately there's a bigger story to tell.
Vanessa O'Brien telling hers in To the Greatest Heights, her book that's now available. You can find her in the Guinness Book of World Records too, but that's not nearly as interesting as her book. So pick that one up, or get it in your favorite online bookseller shop as well. I hope to catch you between climbs again and pick your brain some more. And thanks for being a great sport.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Vanessa, how was the review?
Oh, it was wonderful. They were all great.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. I thought you were great.
No, thank you. Thanks for hanging in there and taking me from place to place. That really helped.
Your story is fascinating. I learned different things from me. They weren't all exactly the same. It was great. I mean, I'll see if I can have it more.
That would be wonderful.
And if not, then I'm sure we'll do it again. But if it's great thing to come and climate change in particular, just that topic.
Oh, I know. It really is. And Glasgow, COP26 is happening with Glasgow in London at the end of this year. So, and Everest's climbing season starts in April. So there'll always be lots to, to opine about. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your help today. Yeah, now the U.S. is in, so it's great.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk again about that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, Vanessa.
All right, bye-bye.